नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि संघं शरणं गच्छामि द्वितीयंपि बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि द्वितीयंपि धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि द्वितीयंपि संघं शरणं गच्छामि तृतीयंपि बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि तृतीयंपि धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि तृतीयंपि संघं शरणं गच्छामि पाणातिपाता वीरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि अदिन्नदाना वीरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि कामेषु मिच्छाचारा वीरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि मुसावादा वीरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि सुरामेरयमज्जपमादठाणा वीरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि सब्बपापस्सकरणं कुशलस्य उपसम्पदा सच्चित्तपर्योदपणम् एतं बुद्धानशासनं साधु साधु साधु
Hello, hello, hello. I am audible. Hello, 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 hello. Hello. Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to everybody, all speakers and participants. Yesterday we have heard Dr. Nitin Rao, Dr. K.S. Chauhan, Dr. Bhalchandra Mundgekar and Dr. Arshdeep Kamble on various subjects related to the reservation. Today we have four speakers, Dr. Padma Shri Dr. Sukhdev Thorat. Probably you everybody knows him. He is academician, researcher in various social issues and speaks about the data to prove his opinion. He speaks writes continuously on the discrimination of Dalits. Today he will speak on reservation policy need for reforms. Another speaker is Dr. Rajshekhar Brundu, an IAS and Principal Secretary in Haryana. He is a well-known thinker and writer on caste, Dalit history and literature. He is recipient of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Ratna Award 2016 by Delhi government. He will elaborate on political reservations in India. The third speaker, Milind Avsarmol, a Mumbai IITian settled in US since last 25 years. He is working as a director of E-Trade Financial Corporation, New York. He is a staunch Ambedkarite committed to the struggle against the caste discrimination. His passion is to take our cause to United Nations. He will speak on affirmation policy in United States, where about 30% reservation is implemented for the blacks. The today's last speaker is Dr. Pradeep Dhobale. He is working as Assistant General Manager in Air India in Mumbai. He is a staunch Ambedkarite and dedicated for the cause of OBC, working through OBC Seva Sangha. He will elaborate his thoughts on present situation of OBC reservation. Thank you.
Hello. Well, there is a constant disturbance, but I will again begin with. I think I'll cut short my speech. I think I had begin by saying that reservation policy and similar policies are used in the world for certain specific reason. These are the policies which are group focused policies. These are the policies which are taken for a group as a whole. These are not the policy which are focused on individual. The group they lack rights, economic, civic, and political. As a result, these policies are developed as against the policies which are focused on individual. Now, in India, we know that because of the caste system and the institution of untouchability, the untouchable suffered from denial of right, economic, educational, civil right, and political right for quite some time. And beside, the untouchable also suffer not only from denial of rights, but they also suffered from what is called untouchability, which necessarily considered them impure and polluting. As a result of that, they are physically segregated and socially isolated. Uh, there are no intercaste marriages. There are no interdining. I'm talking of the formal system. And even today, you can see that in every village, the settlement is segregated. Social relation is much less. Interdining is much less. Forget about intercaste marriages, exception apart. So the untouchability makes their situation a lot more pitiable. Now, one must remember that this denial of right and imposition of a stigma of pollution and purity, whereby they suffered from isolation, is a very long institution. The It is said that everybody agree now that Manusmriti was written sometime in BC 200, and even if we take BC 200 as the beginning point, it is more than 2000 years that untouchability has been practiced. Nowhere in the world the institution like untouchability has continued that long. Even slavery in USA is a story of 300 to 400 years. So now this is the background. Now in the world, the policies are used for various groups which suffer from discrimination, from gender, from religion, from race, from color, and many other identities. Generally speaking, if you look at the various policy, I had studied, I believe, about 100 countries reservation policy. This policy can be classified into two forms. One is the compensation policy, or what is called reparation policy in United States terms. Second policy is the providing legal safeguard and other safeguard against discrimination, and also develop measure whereby we provide a fair share to the discriminated group in various spheres in the economy, society, and polity. Now, what is this measure against the compensation policy? Now, the compensation policy is basically a compensation for the denial of right for a longer period of time. If you are denied right to property, right to education for about 2000 years, the result is that you are assetless and you are illiterate and you are without civil right. Therefore, a compensation policy is used to pay for the denial of right. This is generally a sort of one-time agreement whereby the victims are paid and compensated in terms of fund and in terms of money. I can give you one or two example. For example, the Jews. Jews, because their property was destroyed, taken away, they were given compensation. Surviving Jews were given compensation. Their relatives were given compensation. If there are no surviving Jews and relatives, then the fund was given to Israel as a Jew state. Similarly, in USA, during the Second World War, Japanese were put into concentration camp. Their property was taken. After the Second World War, they were given compensation. I think $20,000 per person. So compensation is given to the person who suffered from denial of right to property and other atrocities, so that there is a one-time settlement whereby you empower them economically and educationally. That is the first policy. The second policy is that even if you are given this uh, reparation, the discrimination still persists, because discrimination is not conditioned by the economic situation, but it is by the identity of the person. In India, it will be the caste of the person. Therefore, another set of policies supplemented and complemented to the compensatory policy, and that is that we have a law against discrimination. So legal safeguards are given that therefore the high caste or discriminated group, those who discriminated will not discriminate. The one who feel discriminated can go to the court of law. And second part of this policy is that since there is a discrimination, the discriminated group may not get an equal share in employment, in education, in politics. Therefore, a method is used, a mechanism used, like reservation policy, which the discriminated group get share and part of this population. These are the two set of policy, because I wanted to bring a clarity on this. To repeat again, it is a policy. First policy is to compensate for the denial in the past. This is an compensation for the denial of right in the past. While the reservation policy, that is legal safeguard and others, this is an safeguard against discrimination in the present, because in the present discrimination continues. So two policies have a two different objective. This must be remembered. Now let us come to India very quickly. Everybody knows about the reservation policy in India. What are the features of reservation policy in India? In India, we tried to adopt the second policy, second measures more prominently than the first. That is, the reservation policy providing legal safeguard against discrimination. And therefore, we passed the Untouchability Offence Act, which is now renamed as the Protection of Civil Rights Act in 1955. Then it was followed by an Atrocity Act, because the high caste would indulge in violent reaction. So this is an act which provides the legal safeguard to the scheduled caste. Now, this is supplemented by the reservation policy, that is giving representation to the scheduled caste in politics, in government job, and in education institution in proportion to their population, because otherwise they would not get it. So this is the policy that we have as far as legal safeguard is concerned and giving fair share is concerned. This is the public sector policy. After 2008, there is some sort of an initiative by the private sector to give some justice to the scheduled caste. This is called a voluntary and the regulatory policy. So this is the policy that we have today for last 50 years. Now, as far as the compensatory policy is concerned, we have not really taken a major step in that direction. Although we have certain policies for the scheduled caste for their economic empowerment. For example, land distribution policy, or some measure for promoting entrepreneurship. We have some reservation in procurement. There are certain states like Maharashtra where they purchase the land and give it to the scheduled caste. There are foreign scholarship to promote the education. So there are some measure for giving compensation to them because of the denial of right in the past. But primarily, the compensation policy is very weak. I will come to that later. But basically, the policy that we are using is the representation in politics, in government job, and education institution, public housing to the scheduled caste in proportion to their population. I think I have brought some clarity on what is the nature of the reservation policy in India. Now, let me go to the limitation, and then I will end up by talking about what kind of reform we need in reservation policy. Now, the limitation of the present reservation policies are the following. There are number of them. First limitation of this reservation policy is that it is confined to only public sector. If you take the education and if you take the employment, it's confined to only public sector, and the vast private sector, where indeed the discrimination persists, is excluded. For example, of the total worker in this country, the 94% of the workers are in the private sector. Only 6 to 7% are in the public sector. And the scheduled caste get a share only in the public sector job in proportion to the 60% population, which is a very tiny share, in fact. If you take the percentage of worker in the public sector, it constitute for the scheduled caste. You take the total scheduled caste worker, and what is the and you take the number of scheduled castes in the public sector under reservation. This constitute only 6% of their total worker. So what I am trying to say is that since the reservation policy is confined to public sector, it constitutes a very small proportion of the employment of the scheduled caste. That's the first limitation. In majority of the country, I think Milind Ausarmol will tell us, in majority of the country, the reservation policy or affirmative action policy, whatever name they call, in Japan they call by special measure, is basically focused on the private sector. But we begin with the public sector, and private sector is excluded. The second limitation that is coming as a follow-up is that because it is confined to public sector and the private sector is excluded, there is a growing privatization of the public sector since early 90s, and as a result, the percentage of the jobs in the public sector is continuously declining. I have a feeling that only about 1/4 of the public sector jobs are in public sector. So whenever there is a privatization, there is a de-reservation. Now the de-reservation has heavily come in the government job because of the privatization of the public sector undertaking, and also the privatization of the education institution. Half of our universities now are in private sector. 90% of our colleges are in the private sector. So there is a complete erosion of the reservation policy, which focuses only on the public sector. This is the first limitation of this policy. Second is that private sector has taken some initiative. It is a self-regulated and voluntary policy, but I think we do not know because it is not monitored, so we do not know what is happening. My feeling is that nothing much is being done. There are limitations of the political reservation policy. There is argument that political representation, the way it is conducted, it is sent only the nominal persons and not the real person. I would not deal with this. Rajshekhar Undru, who has written a book recently, he should talk about this more. So I will not discuss about the limitation of the political reservation. The second limitation, which is very important of the reservation, is that the compensation or a reparation, which is given as a one-time settlement, that is not at all practiced in India. For example, the untouchables, they did not have a right to property, as a result of which the proportion of landless is very high. And that proportion of landlessness is still remain very high because government has not taken any serious initiative to distribute the land to the scheduled caste. Therefore, Babasaheb Ambedkar in 1946 has recommended the nationalization of land and distribution of land to everybody, so everybody had equal access. He didn't have a faith that land reform will benefit the scheduled caste. But government has not also taken seriously the land distribution program in various states. Although there is a scheme, in Telangana, in Maharashtra, in Tamil Nadu, but this has not really been taken seriously. So landlessness is still very high among the scheduled caste. Similarly, education, there are, except this Government of India scholarship allocation to which is also going down, there is not a major initiative, a fund allocated for the educational development of the scheduled caste. Therefore, the enrollment ratio in higher education is much less. In 2017, I look at the figure, the enrollment ratio of the scheduled caste is only 20% as compared to about 45% for the high caste. So the enrollment ratio of the scheduled caste is half that of the high caste. So in other area also, the compensation policy has not been taken seriously, or even the government has not even thought of the compensation policy as a matter of fact. Now, therefore, I will now come to the reform and I will then end there. There are other speakers also. The first thing that this policy require a reform is that we should take the compensation or a reparation seriously. Where we need the compensation? First is that we should distribute the land to the scheduled caste. There is a lot of land lying vacant, which is called a cultivable wasteland. It's a public land. Government need not purchase the land from the private sector, but there has to be a serious program where government distribute about, I think, about 9 million hectares lying vacant, and they should take the proportion of the landless among the scheduled caste, give them the land, and at least bring them on par with the high caste. The proportion of landowners should be at least on par with OBCs and the high caste. That is the first compensation measure. Second is for education, that is substantial fund should be kept available for the promotion of education through scholarship, through overseas and domestic scholarship, and hostels and many other ways, because at the moment there is very little. That's the reason why the enrollment ratio is very low, and the major damage is being done by the privatization of higher education and school education, which is very expensive and beyond the limit of the scheduled caste. So I think there is a need to have an educational development program. Now, why I am emphasizing on compensation? Compensation is recognized in the United Nations framework. Compensation is recognized because, and you understand that point clearly, that whom do we compensate and why do we compensate? If there is an accident of the two vehicle, the person who got damaged, he is being compensated by the person who committed the mistakes. Here, the untouchable were denied the right to property and education, particularly at the cost of the advantage to the high caste. So the high caste benefited. They have more land now, higher education, good quality employment, because they were denied that. So there is a legal case and there is a moral case that the scheduled caste should be compensated fully. There should be one-time program. This is a one-time settlement which should be taken. And we have done that. You know that at the time of a partition, when the lakhs of the refugees came from the Pakistan, they were given land for the houses. They were given consolidated amount to start the business. We have done that. I think that is the kind of policy that we will have to do it to bridge the gap. So this is first reform, that we require a reparation and compensatory policy, we on a legal ground and on a moral ground, to pay them what was taken by the high caste from them. This is the first reform that we require. The second reform is in the reservation policy. Reservation policy is a safeguard against discrimination and to give fair share to the scheduled caste in job, in education institutions. Now, the reform that is required is, first, that the private sector has to be brought in. The reservation policy should be extended to the private sector, both in employment, in entrepreneurship, and in education. Because the privatization of the enterprises and education is going at a very fast rate. Now, how should we do? That's another issue. Private sector is very scared that it should not be legal, because I have been interacting with them. If it is not legal, doesn't matter, but accept the policy of reservation in public education institution, in private job, wherever there are underrepresentation, there should be scheduled caste should be give due representation. And in entrepreneurship, the government can do quite a lot. We have an example of Malaysia. We have an example of South Africa. For example, in Malaysia, they have not given, they have a scheme whereby entrepreneurship and business are increased among the Malayas, but taking business is a difficult thing. So what they have done a simple thing. What is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is nothing but a ownership of capital on which you get the capital gain. So what they have done, they have increased the shareholding and debenture holding by the Malayas in proportion to the population. So once you own a capital in the form of a share, you get a capital gain at the end of the year. So that policy can be there. Now, we do not know what is the share of the scheduled caste in the share capital of the private sector, but we can take a decision that 16 to 20% of the share will be given to the poor from the scheduled caste, so that annually they get certain some capital gain. That is the other thing. Similarly, for the education, that the in private sector institution we can have a reservation policy. I think these are some of the suggestions for the reform. Even Untouchability Act also is not yielding proper results, so there has to be some reform. There has to be a program on the part of the government and civil society to eradicate the untouchability. There is a need for reform in the political representation, but I will leave that issue to Rajshekhar Undu. Well, let me summarize and finish it here. The present reservation policy is on the verge of erosion, serious erosion because of the privatization, and that we have not been paid, compensated for the loss of the economic right to property, right to entrepreneurship, right to good employment in employment. So therefore, there is a need first to compensate, develop a compensatory policy at a one-time settlement, and second, then reform the reservation policy the way I had told you, extending it to the private sector in a manner such that it can be monitored. Well, I must stop it here because there were technical obstacles and difficulties. Thank you very much.
Hello, Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya. Can you folks hear me? Hello, can somebody confirm that they can hear me, please? Okay, thank you. Again, Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya, dear friends. I am Milind Ausramol from New York. And I am really very excited to share my thoughts with you on this occasion. But before that, let me thank and congratulate the organizers for organizing such a wonderful event, that too on the centenary event of the first Bahishkrit Parishad that was held in Nagpur under the chairmanship of Shahu Maharaj. And in that conference, actually, a lot was spoken in his presidential address about reservation. So if time permits, I might allude to that later on. In the meanwhile, listening to Dr. Thorat sir, which is always a pleasure and it's always very illuminating. As he mentioned, this issue of discrimination and its current resolutions is, in a way, outside India also in many countries. Particularly speaking of the US, I would like to share how the issue is tackled here, giving a brief background about what the issue is and what is the current state and what are the remedies that are put in place. So as we all know, the African Americans were treated into slavery by the white Americans for about 400 years back. And then somewhere along the line, the human values and whatever activism kicked in. So some part of America, particularly the North America, they were against the slavery, and the South America were in favor of it. One was the agrarian society, which is the South, which needed the slaves for manual labor, whereas the North was an industrialized society. So when this conflict happened during the presidency of Abraham Lincoln, that time there was a civil war, and in this civil war, the whites fought the whites for the liberation of the black. Now, this is very significant and important in the sense that even Babasaheb in his Mukti Kon Pathe speech in 1936 very categorically mentions this, that the whites fought the whites for the liberation of the black. And this is something which we can't even dream of happening in India, that the upper castes are going to oppose each other for preserving the civil rights or restoring the rights of the backward castes. So anyway, when that civil war happened and it concluded with the North's victory and slavery was legally abolished, at that time, after that, in 1968, 14th Amendment in the Constitution, 14th Schedule was introduced, which was just to safeguard the interests of the African Americans who, after the Civil War, where they had escaped from the South to the northern states, and just to preserve their rights, this constitutional amendment was made. It had many other clauses, but the primary one of it was about safeguarding their civil rights. It was still not complete equality at that time. That actually happened much later, around 1964, when the civil rights movement started. And in the civil rights movement, when there was Vietnam War, and it was by and large a very turbulent time in the United States, politically and socially speaking. So at that time, the John F. Kennedy and after his assassination, Lyndon B. Johnson, President Johnson, they put together some measures which are very effective, and they are through modification and evolution, they are in practice even today. So few of the things I would touch upon how it is handled. So one of the things that is in effect here as a law, as a mandate, is EEO, Equal Employment Opportunity. What that means is that any employer is obligated to make sure that there is no discrimination on the basis of race and gender and various other things, but primarily it was targeted for race. So the entire issue of discrimination is tackled such that if there are 5 applications coming in with, let's say, 3 blacks and 2 whites, and there are only 2 positions and only the whites get selected, then that will be considered, considering that all things are same, that will be considered as a breach of this particular law. So that law was put in place, it is still in practice, and it is not just in practice in letter but in spirit also. And I say this because as an executive in my own company, we have to undergo training every year. We are sensitized to this, that the employment policies should be absolutely non-discriminatory. So this is where everybody should be treated equal and there should be no discrimination. So it's a good start. The other aspect of this issue, the resolution, the remedy to this issue of discrimination, is the affirmative action. Now, the affirmative action is a proactive measure to redress the wrong that has been done in the past as well as that continues in the present. So on one hand, we have the EEO, Equal Opportunity Employment, where there should be no discrimination at all. Whereas on the affirmative action, it is a discriminatory, it's a policy which encourages positive discrimination, which means that given all things similar, the employers are encouraged to hire people from the discriminated communities, which could be the minorities, which really means the African Americans, which could be women, which could be disabled people, but particularly we'll focus on the African American part of it. So due to this policy and the way this policy is implemented, it's very interesting. And like Thorat sir mentioned, it is targeted towards the private sector. It is not implemented in the government sector. The government is obligated to follow the equal employment opportunity, meaning they cannot discriminate either positive or negative. But anybody doing business with the government, anybody, any corporation, private enterprise, which is getting any kind of funding, contracts from the government in any way, which is supported by the government in any way, is legally obligated to implement the affirmative action plan. And this is again not just in letter but in spirit. There is a separate commission which is EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which very actively monitors and takes action. Complaints can be raised if at all there is any wrongdoing that one suspects. And the private organizations here themselves are very proactively and I would say very voluntarily, though there is a legal mandate for companies that have some government funding or some government contracting. But even companies which don't, they have a moral obligation. That's how it is worded, that they have a moral obligation to implement the affirmative action. And guess what? They do it. They do it, though it's a private organization, the motive is profit, but they do understand that there has been something wrong that has been done to a certain section of society, and that wrong has to be corrected, and that wrong continues even today in terms of discrimination. So they are very proactive and very honest and sincere about it, and they implement that. Though legally they are not bound to, and just like Professor Thorat had said earlier in his speech, that in India, privatization is very rampant and it is completely devoid of any kind of affirmative action or whatever its form in India is through reservation. Whereas out here in the US, even if the legal mandate is only for some companies, but everybody participates in that. And like I said, there are training programs within the corporations to sensitize people, and those training programs are very extensive. They are compulsory, they are recorded, so that if at all there is a query or if at all there is any audit, those come into play. So that is about the employment part. And now coming to education, in the field of education also, there is a lot of guidance for states to give some kind of affirmative action so that the students from minority and disadvantaged communities can come up in a better way. Now, there are some states which have not, 8 states in particular, which is not a bad thing, out of 50 states, which have not implemented that. But by and large, most of the states have honored this guidance, this directive, and they follow it in principle. And the state universities or the community colleges are there because of the government support. So they anyway have to do it as part of the earlier legal mandate. So that is how the issue is tackled here in the US. In my opinion, of my experience of being here for 25 years, there is a sincerity of purpose. There is an honesty in its implementation. There is an admission of the facts, of the reality that something has not been right and something is not currently right that needs to be addressed. So that thing, for some unfortunate reason, I see not, I mean, it's missing in India. As we can see, the Black community here came into emancipation much later than our independence, like in 1964 is when the journey started. But if you look at the situation today, the scenario today, because of very honest implementation of policies and taking these things in its sincere implementation, today the situation, the Blacks are in the mainstream, whether it is in the area of sports, whether it is in the area of music, whether it's in the area of cinema and every other field. So there is no resentment by the mainstream society. By mainstream, I mean the white America. There is no resentment. I mean, there is, as a matter of fact, encouragement for them to be there. So when you have Michael Jackson or Michael Jordan or you have Samuel Jackson or Oprah Winfrey, they are not resented. I mean, if you even look at the President Obama's tenure, this is a very sincere implementation of remedial measures to take care of a social wrong that was there in the past and that continues. So that sincerity in a short time played out in such a way that today, I'm not saying there is no problem. In fact, there is problem. This is an ongoing process. This is something that will still need a lot of concerted effort to make it right. But compared to India, I think they are quite ahead of us in the sense that the dominant community is sincere about it. And that's where really that makes a difference. In India, the spirit is missing, the letter is there, but I am not sure how far that is really going. There is a lot of self-regulation within the private corporates to make sure that there is no discrimination, to make sure that the workforce is in proportionate measures. And again, this is not necessarily mandated, but this is very much coming out of their self-moralistic stand. That is very important. Now, one thing we have to understand in all these remedial measures, there is no criteria for economic background. So Michael Jordan, who is a multi-millionaire, is still looked upon as a discriminated person because he is a discriminated person based on identity. So any measure which is remedial is not based on economic criteria. And that is something that I will touch upon when I come to the Indian context. So it is very much based on the social discrimination background, and that is what drives this entire initiative. For economic criteria, there are plans here in the US and very effective ones, I will say, as compared to India, either in terms of social security, in terms of unemployment benefits, or in terms of assistance to housing and free food tickets. So, but then those are not targeted to any group. Then the beneficiaries of those are everybody who falls below certain criteria of economic empowerment. So we have to understand this difference, that social backwardness and any discrimination-based backwardness has to be disconnected from the economic criteria, and that I think is managed very well here, and it has shown results. Today, the interracial relation, if you see, and again, I'm not saying it's all a done deal. It's a long way to go, but still, midstream also, there is a lot of laudable things going on. We have so many interracial marriages. We have so many interracial associations and close community contacts, so that people are living here as a society, and then that identity becomes only an identity for the purpose of non-discrimination. And I think that is something which we can take a leaf out of that page into our own situation. So having said that about the American context, now let me turn back to our situation in India. The speakers before me, even today and yesterday, touched upon most of the very significant aspects of reservation. So I will not go into any details of those, but I'll just touch upon them wherever it is significant. So first and foremost, why is reservation required? I think Thorat sir explained that very well. There are two aspects to it. One is what is going on wrong currently, today, in today's time. That has to be addressed through the remedy of reservation. But what has happened in the past, the reason why we are in this situation, plus the disadvantage that we face because what has happened in the past, has to be tackled not through reservation. Reservation is not for that. It has to come through a different means. And that is something that we have to work upon more diligently. But focusing on the reservation part, it is purely because there is something wrong that is going on at this time in our society. And without reservation, what would happen is, if we all were meritorious, if we all were economically empowered, we would still end up not getting any opportunities if there were no reservations. So reservations really are a guarantee that has been put together by our founding fathers to make sure that the discrimination does not work its way and there is some remedy towards it. So having said that, why do we need reservation? What are the objectives of reservation? So one obviously is to fight this discrimination and to overcome it so that we get our opportunities, and that has happened to some extent. But I think more importantly, what Dr. Harshdeep Kamble yesterday mentioned is also to occupy those positions of power, those strategic positions, so that we become. Reservations are not just to enjoy your livelihood or just to make a living. Reservations have a much nobler purpose than that. It is not given at an individual level, like Thorat sir just mentioned. It is given at a group level. It is given at a community level. It is not an individual empowerment scheme. It is a scheme for uplifting your entire community. And that is the spirit of reservation that we have to understand. So any empowered, backward community person today and I know many of them are in a good situation, should not feel that this is the end of the road for reservation. No, this is not. The community is what should be the picture. Whatever empowerment any individual has got, that empowerment has to translate into the social empowerment or social upliftment of the group. And that, I think, should be our focus. So having said that, as a community, we need to make sure that we are there in every level of policy making, simply because that is where the nation is run. That is where all decisions are taken. And those decisions are important for our survival because we are part of the society. We are part of, simplest example is Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Just because if happened to be such a superhuman personality, single-handedly he made sure that the interests of the lower communities, I would not say just our community or his community, but anybody who was deserving of any consideration, he took care of that. So that is the leverage you get at those levels. So that is also another purpose of reservation. So, and again, I will not elaborate further on this. Dr. Harshdeep Kamble did explain very well yesterday. But economic criteria should not be used to arrest this upward mobility. This upward mobility is very important. A class 4 employee who is at entry level in the scheme of reservation will not rise to the topmost position overnight. It will be a gradual journey from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4. And this is work in progress. At this time, we are not there at all the levels. The top levels are still vacant. Our representation is not there. So this is work in progress, and we are actually midstream in this journey. So we have to make sure that we continue marching on this line, and maybe in a few generations ahead, we will be at that position. And that's what we should aspire for. Reservation certainly has not outlived its significance. It is very much required at this point. Coming to the economic criteria is something that is purported and which is flashed that, okay, why economically empowered BCs need any kind of reservations, and they should make way for the poor people. So the important thing here is that reservation is not a policy for economic upliftment. Just like I gave the example of the US. Even if Dalit is economically empowered, he or she is not devoid of the social stigma, of the social backwardness that still continues. And the best example is the President of India was denied temple entry in Orissa. So economic criteria cannot be a deciding factor for the availability of reservation. Other thing is the poor in the upper caste and poor in the backward caste are two different categories. The upper caste poor is poor by virtue as an individual. He is poor because of his specific individual situation, because of the situation at that point in time. That situation can change later on. He can become rich and he can become poor again. But the poor in the backward class are poor by virtue of their poverty is really a consequence of their social backwardness. And that social backwardness is a group phenomena. It's not an individual phenomena. At the same time, it's a generational phenomena. It's been going on for across generations. So leaving alone the handful exceptions who are financially empowered because of their hard work and for whatever reason, much of the society is in the backward community is still very poor. And when you say poor, it means a different thing for a forward caste. For a backward caste, the poor is really poorest of poor, destitute. I mean, their poverty is really at the point where survival is their only concern at any time. So they will jump in to do manual scavenging happily, I will say, and probably perish in the process due to the occupational hazards. But a forward caste poor, so-called poor, will not do anything that will stigmatize his caste privilege or the honor and dignity that comes with his caste. So if at all there is any reservation required on economic criteria, then we have to make sure that we are comparing apples to apples, because the poor amongst the backward caste and the poor among the forward caste are two different categories, even if you just take the economic criteria purely on its own merit. Now, there are rich amongst the backward caste, and why should not they make way for the poor within their community? And it seems seemingly from the face of it as a very compelling and a very convincing argument. But just digging deeper a little bit, excuse me. Hello? Hello? I think I will just take another few minutes to conclude. Sorry about that. Hello? Okay, I think there is paucity of time, and I'll just conclude this with this, that the rich amongst the backward caste the rich among the forward caste, will they make way for the poor among the forward caste? Because there are poor among the forward caste also. So if they start practicing what they preach, then we can go from there. So with that, I had a few other points to cover, but seems like we have time constraints, so I will take a stop here. I would, before I conclude, I would like to thank all the organizers for giving this wonderful opportunity and organizing this event. And I'll also thank Sukhdev Thorat sir for his extensive research in this field and his continued guidance. Thank you all. Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya, all of you. I hope I am audible. If that confirmation comes, I am going ahead. I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity today. I am currently talking to you all from the city of Chandigarh. My topic today is something interesting and very, very exclusive and important. That is political reservation. We have seen Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar going through the entire process during the roundtable conference and before that on bringing political representation for the untouchables. I will use the words untouchable, Dalit, and scheduled caste interchangeably. After the Constitution of India and we got our reserved seats for 10 years and they kept on extending every 10 years, there was a kind of paucity and of knowledge onto how our political representatives were behaving. And also the reservation per se in the political arena, the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes god has gone silent over the last ever since 1950 till the last 70 years. But what I would like to do today in the very limited time frame I got is to just take you across actually why the reservation in a political representation came in. Is it just because Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Ratamalai Srinivasan and others pushed for this aspect? There is a little part of history to this. We all know about it, but I'll try to recap. When the representational aspects came about the native Indians before the British in 1909, the Muslims came in. 1919, the Muslims and Sikhs came in as a minority. So one can always see Babasaheb Ambedkar pitching in, saying that the untouchables, the depressed classes, are a minority. And he used the 1911 census data. I'm again stressing here that the 1911 census data was very important for him to pitch in 1919 before the Southborough. It was not only Babasaheb Ambedkar, all the Dalit organizations which are all over India, in Bombay Presidency, in Madras Presidency, in Calcutta Presidency, all over where were all Dalit organizations. They wrote representations to the Viceroy. They approached every commission that came in, which was touring into India, and they gave representations. So there was an overall pitch. Of course, for us, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's writings are available for us, and we see what were the concepts he brought in. 1919, he brings in the right to self-determination, the right to representation. He said nobody else can represent our issues, only we can represent. And the next aspect comes in, the representation by virtue of the percentage of population and also the method of representation. So he repeatedly stuck to the separate electorate as the method of representation. Now, when the process of various communities fighting for political reservations came in, the most important thing that happened between Hindus and Muslims was the Lucknow Pact that happened in 1916. After the Lucknow Pact happened, the entire other communities also started fired up. So 1917 to 1919, Southborough, and later on, it continued. But initially, the British only provided nominated seats to the untouchables or the scheduled castes. So one of them was MC Raja, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in Bombay, and several others all over India. 1928 Simon Commission again gave the opportunity for the depressed classes. So wherever Simon Commission went, not only in Bombay, wherever it went in the entire country, Dalit organizations came across and put pressure. And when the Dalit organization came to know that the roundtable conference is going to happen, at least 30, 40 organizations wrote to the Viceroy saying that please call at least 8 representatives of untouchables to the roundtable conference. So what I'm trying to tell is when the entire aspect and mobilization of political reservation took place, it was an all India phenomenon of representation, pressure, and lobbying on the British government. Are we doing it now on any aspect of our agenda in the entire country? Are we going across as an entire country to put pressure on any aspect of, Dalit reservation or reservations education or any of these aspects? So when the 1928 Simon Commission came in, again the Dalit organizations went across, but Simon Commission did not approve reserved seats. So, and all these organizations were hitting, Dr. Babasaheb were hitting on the reserved seats. 1921 census comes into play again, and they use that data again, claim as the percentage of population for representation. As we go across in the round table conference, the very significant aspect which I'd like to touch upon today is the Minorities Pact. The Muslims, untouchables, the Sikhs were not a part of it. The Europeans, the Indian Christians and Anglo-Indians got together and prepared a pact. Why did they do it? They did it because it was to oppose Gandhi's position. Gandhi says untouchables are a part of Hindus, so you cannot take them as a minority. So there was a fight between Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on the entire question of minority or a separate community. If you had seen the work of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he repeatedly pitches that they are a separate minority. So the Minorities Pact says Muslims, I am repeating, untouchables, Sikhs were not a part of it, but they included Sikhs, Indian Christians, Europeans, and Anglo-Indians are a group of minority. Now let us fast forward. To Pune Pact. What is Pune Pact? Pune Pact says it is an agreement between Hindus and untouchables. So here is a major shift in the outlook of the Hindus, which was led by Gandhi and other Hindu leaders, saying that untouchables are a part of Hindus, or depressed class are a part of Hindus. Therefore, from within the Hindu seats or the general seats, we will give a set of reserved seats for them. Yes, that situation continues even today. But here is an agreement of a Pune Pact which moves away the Minorities Pact group of untouchables to the Pune Pact. The movement of such group called depressed classes or untouchables from a minorities group to a Hindu group is a major shift. Why I am coming to this, I will explain you in few minutes. Now, when the Hindus have accepted that you are a part of the Hindu group, they gave their own seats to the untouchables and then they moved ahead. When we come to the 1950 constitution making, Sardar Patel opposes reservation of any kind. He does it after the death of Gandhi and after partition of India. He sets aside in the draft constitution, we have reservation for Muslims, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, Sikhs, and also Indian Christians. Sikhs did not join the Constituent Assembly by then, but a provision was kept. When Sardar Patel tries to abolish entire reservation seats, all the reserved seats, then Ambedkar thwarts his attempt. He blocks his attempt to ensure that the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes will have reserved seats, which were there for only for 10 years. Now let us go as a very significant point of the agreement between the Hindus and the untouchables. The basic agreement was that the reserved seats would be for X number of years, whether it be 10 years or 20 years. But then whenever it needs to be revised, that there should be a mutual agreement. There should be a mutual agreement. If the Dalits wanted them to be extended, they should be extended. That is the agreement. And since 1950, we have extended it every 10 years, and now they stand up to 2030. Now let us shift to the reservation for other classes. In the 1935 Act, we had reserved seats for women, for backward castes, for tribes, and various other, apart from the religious minorities. But only in 1992, we come to a situation where women got reserved seats in the legislative bodies, that is the local bodies, in municipalities and in Panchayat Raj institutions. Now today, you will be surprised to know that out of 29 states in this country, 20 states have 50% reservation for women in local bodies and Panchayat Raj institutions. Let us look at the backward classes. Backward classes had reserved seats in the 1935 Act, that is 37 election and 46 elections. And today, out of 24 states which can give reservation to backward caste, 17 states have reservation. That means the Ambedkarite idea of representation, when we move from the British colonial time to the present time, we have extended and expanded those reservations for women and backward classes. Now, what is the way forward? Should we wait every 10 years and look at the parliament that, okay, now 2020, please extend our reservations for 10 more years, 2030, please extend our reservations for 10 more years, or is political reservation should be a permanent feature? We need to look at it and think about it. Should it be a permanent feature? What today we have achieved as the 1955 Untouchability Offences Act or the SC/ST Atrocities Act, we have a major role played by our political representatives. We have a counter argument that they don't represent us, they don't come across when atrocities take place for Dalits. That thing apart, are we today ready to forego the political reservations that have been brought to us by Babasaheb Ambedkar, fighting with Gandhi? Now, what is the way forward? How should we go ahead? I have looked at the entire expansion of women reservation and backward classes reservation. When the women reservation bill came several times, at least 5 times before the parliament. So the fight came that the Dalits, the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes agreed, okay, within the entire SC/ST reservation, certainly 30% reserved seats should be for the women. And also 30% of the reserved seats should be from among the general seats. There came an issue of other backward caste political parties. They made a pitch, very importantly, that it should come only when the reserved seats for backward castes would come in the parliament. So if there are a percentage of seats to be set aside for backward class women, that should be from among the backward class reserved seats. So this is the situation as on today. Even today the 2008 women reservation bill is pending. It has been passed by the Rajya Sabha. The political reservation which existed in 1935 for all classes, all religious minorities, SCs, STs, for women, and today we are looking at a future of all the oppressed groups, all the groups who need political representation to ameliorate their conditions. This is very important that we should take forward the women reservation and the backward classes reservation into the parliament and the assembly. That's very important. KG Balakrishnan Sahab, the Chief Justice of India, gave a judgment in Ashok Kumar Thakur case. He, of course, put a cap of 50% on the overall reserved seats in the local bodies, in the Panchayat Raj institutions and municipal institutions. But he said a very significant thing. He classified, or he looked at backward classes not as a single group. If you look at the word socially and educationally backward classes, it exists in Article 15.4, the First Amendment. That word does not exist anywhere else. It comes in only once. Then in the Article 16, where there is reservation for jobs, you find backward class of citizens. That is a separate word. If you see the Article 243, where reserved seats are given to backward classes in Panchayat Raj institutions and local bodies, it uses the word, just a word of backward class. Why I am trying to stress this is the future of the political reservation should be expanded for women and backward classes, and we should further expand it for any other group of people who seek representation. The scheduled caste, with a lot of difficulty, with the intervention of Babasaheb, they were able to get it, and with a lot of difficulty, it is still continuing. Are we ready to face every time and looking at the parliament? Imagine if a number of the overall oppressed communities or the backward communities, which the definition which Babasaheb used in Article 16.4, are there in the parliament, we would have not needed so much of firefighting, so much of stress and pressure to create such laws, programs and schemes where we can, maybe within 10 years, we can look at the bringing up all these backward classes people who are scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, or even women, all those communities which are oppressed, which are fighting for their equal rights, to the, I'm not using the word mainstream, but to such a situation where we can put across our political points very well. So what I look at very clearly as on today is expanding the idea, Babasaheb's idea, is expanding Babasaheb's idea of the political reservation. Of course, within the scheduled caste, there is an issue. Babasaheb wrote an entire book of what Congress and Gandhi have done to the untouchables. That was an issue where he said the representatives which come through reserved seats for the scheduled caste don't represent. And he suggested certain formulas. One was a separate electorate. So we should also look at bringing in a change in the electoral method. One aspect is representation by virtue of percentage of your population. The other aspect is what is the method by which your representative is being elected. That method determines the way that particular representative behaves. That method within the constitutional scheme also makes the political parties to behave. Their behavior, their manifestos, everything will change the day there is a change in the method. The second method Dr. B.R. Ambedkar looked at was a minimum percentage of votes to be obtained by a reserved candidate in a SC constituency to be cleared as to be declared as elected. So he initially put it 25%, it could be 20%, it could be 35%. That means a reserved candidate to be winning should show that he has received more than 20 to 25% votes of his own community. That means there will be 2 ballot boxes, 2 EVMs. Only Dalits will vote in 1 EVM. Other people will vote in EVM, and there will be a counting. If the candidates who are contesting do not get more than say 20% votes, they'll be eliminated. So these are all methods to ensure. The political method is also the method of election is also to ensure that your representative represents you. That is very important. So we have the entire range of electoral methods available. We have a future. We should look at a future where all those, I'm also looking at a future where LGBT would have their reserved seats for them to stand there and voice their issues. That is how we have moved as a society, where LGBT once was not accepted, today is accepted. Women reservation, which we could not see till 1992, is a reality. Backward caste, where Marathas had reservation in 1937 and 46, and non-Brahmins had reservation in Madras in 1921, and backward classes have reservation. This thing we should look. Why should we talk about the entire representational aspect? After 70 years of independence, we are still staring at poverty. We are not able to achieve the ideals of the constitution. We are not, still we are in the streets fighting for equality. Still we are in the streets fighting for the atrocities that are happening against scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, or women, or any of these groups. Still we are fighting amongst ourselves. Can the political representation or political reservation for all these classes can be a step forward, since we have women reservation already in municipalities and Panchayati Raj? We have backward caste reservation already in municipalities and Panchayati Raj. We should take them ahead for the parliament. And this is an Ambedkarite ideal, that the representation of all classes should be there, and all of them should be represented. They should be talking about themselves, the right to self-determination, right to representation, and representation by a percentage of the population, and by a method by which they have to be elected. This is what I wanted to talk today on political reservations. I thank Professor Thorad. I've heard him, and Dr. Milind from New York. Very glad to hear both of you. Thank you so much, the organizers, for giving me an opportunity to talk to you all. Thank you so much.
जय भीम, जय भारत, जय संविधान. Am I audible? So we are celebrating the centenary of Akhil Bharatiya Bahishkrit Parishad, which was conducted at Nagpur on 31st May at Kasturchand Park, and Rajarshi Shahu Maharaj had come as a president for that convention Parishad, and we are aware about the Mangaon Parishad in the state of Kolhapur, where Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was introduced, but he was only introduced. But the people from the Nagpur city came to know that it was a very small conference, so they wanted to do something on the All India basis. And on All India basis, I must read the name of these five peoples. Kisan Phagwaji Bansod, Kalicharan Nandagauri, Rajaram Vasnik, Raghunath Shambharkar, and Reva Ram Kawade. These are the five peoples. Actually, they went to Babasaheb they met Babasaheb at Mumbai, and Babasaheb said that this convention should be held, and whatever we have to speak there actually should have the national and international approval, and there should be the chief president of the conference should be of the man of that height. And then the Shahu Maharaj was decided, and Shahu Maharaj decided this is and this 1922 is a very important year for our social movement because Babasaheb also come to know about Dr. Shahu Maharaj come to know about Babasaheb Ambedkar and Babasaheb wanted to speak something to tell to the people about the conditions of the untouchables. And that time Shahu Maharaj gave the check of 2,500 rupees to Babasaheb, and hence the Mook Nayak started on the first Agralek of the Mook Nayak came on 31st January 1920. So we can say this is very important year, that centenary we are celebrating. And in the first article which Babasaheb had made, editorial had made, Babasaheb has said that this Hindu society is like a building where everybody takes a birth in a particular layer, and he has to be there only. And this building is that nobody can go up and nobody can come down because doors are closed. That was the status. And then happened on 30th May and 31st May, and the delegates, around 500 delegates from different states of that time, Madras, Calcutta, Madhya Pranta, from the North India, South India had come, and around 10,000 or thousands of people had gathered. And there Rajarshi Shahu Maharaj said ki, to the said for the Babasaheb, that is, this is Pradnya Surya, याच्यानंतर हाच आपला पुढारी आहे आणि हाच आता आपल्याला दिशा देणार आहे. And that was so that has witnessed by the Nagpur people actually. And there actually the national leadership of the Babasaheb emerged. That is why we are celebrating this centenary function, that everybody must understand. Now I come to my topic, because this and as I come to my topic, the topic given to me is what is the status of OBC reservation. So as we people are knowing that it is Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar who has given a resignation in 1951 on the issue of that the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru government was not coming up with the commission, as Babasaheb has said in the Indian Constitution in Article 3040. And one of the speakers said earlier also that the word used for the OBCs is socially and educationally backward class. So this word is used first in Article 340. That is, the word ACBC was existing in the Indian Constitution. And why they are called socially and educationally backward class? Because in the socially backward class, because in Hindu system we have the Varna Vyavastha, and then there comes the Brahman, then below that is the Kshatriya, then comes the Vaishya, and then comes the Shudra. So Shudras were there to serve the upper Varnas, and in hierarchy also they were at the bottom, and they were denied. So that is why they were socially backward. And why the word educationally backward? Because these Shudra Varna people were denied the right to education. That is why they are educationally backward. So the word constituted in the Constitution is they are socially and educationally backward. So, and then when the Babasaheb resigned for the Hindu Code Bill, that is also there, and the second, and this is also the reason that he because if we again go to that centenary, that all India Bahishkrit Parishad, so there the main theme which was uttered by Rajarshi Shahu Maharaj was the development of India depends on how far the caste system vanishes from the India. भारत के प्रगति का प्रमाण इसके ऊपर निर्धारित होता है कि भारत में जाति व्यवस्था कितने जल्दी खत्म होती है. So that was the basic theme of that convention actually, which was held 30th and 31st May. And that is why, afterward the work of the Babasaheb comes of annihilation of the caste. And for in the process of annihilation of the caste, the reservation has come in the Indian constitution. And we were basically the two things where we were having the highest level of differentiation. That is, one is the gender basis, that is male-female inequality, and another is a caste inequality. So Babasaheb has resigned on these two reasons as a cabinet minister. He was a law minister, and if you read his resignation letter, he has specially used the word that the 1 year has lapsed since the constitution has come into the implementation, but forget about the commission, but even the thought has not come into the mind of the government to constitute a commission to identify the socially and educationally backward caste, that is the OBC. So बाबा साहब ने कहा कि 1 साल हो गया है और अभी तक सरकार के दिमाग में भी ये बात नहीं आ रही है कि कोई आर्टिकल 340 के तहत कोई कमीशन नियुक्त किया जाए, और इसलिए बाबा साहब ने वो इसका राजीनामा दिया. वो राजीनामा पत्र बाबा साहब का आप पढ़ सकते हैं. तो फिर और जब ये बात आती है तो मैं आई वांट टू tell to my all elite scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBC brothers and sisters that this fight of our rights, though it is in the constitution, but if we have to bring into the practice, we have to go hand in hand. And for that, I take you to the first amendment in the Indian Constitution, that is Article 15.4, and that Chapakam and versus State of Madras, and the case has gone to the Supreme Court, and as it was not in line of the Constitution, so that communal award was dissolved. So that time there was around for 15-20 days there was a hesitation by Periyar Ramaswamy in the Chennai that we people should have, because there is a history of his social justice party. There is a Dravida movement was running, and already the reservation was existing there. And then came the Article 15.4. So and the Babasaheb and the Pandit Nehru actually said, and that time the Periyar in his speeches has said कि though Article 16.4 gives us the reservation in the employment and for the post, but where is the reservation in education? So the Article 15.4 has come, because without education, how we can get a job? So Article 15.4 has come, and that said that for the and for scheduled tribe and for socially and educationally backward classes SEBC, there should be made some special provision. Under that special provision, again the reservation system started, and under that special provisions, now we see even in the Mumbai city, in the Maharaj and Sidcos, we have the reservation for SC/ST people. We are trying to get that reservation for OBC people also. So under that Article 15.4, that special provision comes. So it was a fight fought by hand in hand by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and Periyar, that yielded to the Article 15.4. That we must keep in mind. And recently, if you go to the 2005 and 2006, the Article 15.5 which has come, as the private colleges have said that under Article 19 we can't provide a reservation to these backward communities because we are a private institution, and will decide upon whom to take and not that. And there is one institutions in the Pune chaired by Mr. P.A. Inamdar, and then the matter reached to the Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court, lot of debate happened, and ultimately the Supreme Court said कि what that P. Namdar and his institution say is very correct. Unless there is a provision in the constitution, the SC, ST, OBC will not get reservation. So the fight came, and I want to make all of you aware that by that time, with the help of the All India OBC Federation of OBC Employees Association and its follow-up under the leadership of Mr. G. Karunanidhi, we had persuaded the government to form the OBC Parliamentary Committee. P. Hanumattappa was the chairman of the OBC Parliamentary Committee, and the OBC Parliamentary Committee pressurized the government, and then come Article 15.5, we said not only in the government aided, but even not aided education institutions also, the has to be given to the SC, ST and OBC, and with that in the IITs and IIMs also the OBC, SC, ST was already having reservation in IIT, but the OBC started getting. But where for the private education institutions, now in Maharashtra there are 300 engineering colleges, private engineering colleges. There the SC, ST, OBC have the reservation, and Maharashtra government pays full fee of the SC, ST and 50% fees of the OBC, even if they are studying in the private education institution. So that also happened, because that time the Chief Minister of the Karunanidhi has given a letter to the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh ji, sir, if you do not implement or go for this amendment, actually I will withdraw your support. Yesterday, while I was listening to Bhalchandra Mungekar ji, he was saying that there are 124 member of parliaments, but those they do not utter single word for SC, ST actually, because they are afraid they will not get elected. And that is the difference between the OBC MP. They will not be afraid, because they know even the party do not give the ticket, actually they can come elected. So the SC, ST and OBC MPs should go together, then only the constitution will be implemented. I know that as far as the understanding of the Mahatma Phule or Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is considered, SC, ST people are stalwart than the OBCs. So those SC, ST people should interact with the OBC member of parliament, and if they decide, because OBC Parliamentary Committee that time was having around 300 member of parliaments. So if these 300 member of parliaments and SC, ST 120, because they of the reservation they have having, so if they decide together, they can make changes. But as an representative of OBC, I completely accept that where the SC, ST is a more awakened society, the OBC is not awakened, and the recent thing regarding this reservation to the reservation to the in the medical college case, I think everybody is knowing. I was trying to put a share screen, but okay, we'll forget that. So around in the last 2017, 18, 19, 20, around 40,000 seats were taken in the all India quota, and of that 27%. That 27% were to be given to the OBCs, so, but they were not given. So around 11,000 seats OBC have lost. It is because they are under the Brahminical clutches, and they have to come out of that. Whereas SC/ST has very strictly follow the Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. They are not under the clutches of, to that extent, in the Brahminical clutches. So it is all time for we people to come together and come out of our slavery, come out of the Brahminical clutches. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has given us a new recognition, that is, we are the citizen of India, and as everybody as a citizen of India should see that the strict implementation of the Indian Constitution happen. I think I'm been informed that we'll go for the question and answer session. I wanted to talk a lot. I had made a lot of points, but okay. we have to stick to the time. So I ask the anchor to go ahead with question answer session. One point I just wanted to put regarding the 16.4 provides for the reservation, and it says that reservation to the backward classes can be given on the basis of whether they are really backward classes. Yes, Mandal Commission has given the list of the backward classes, and second condition says whether they have the adequate representation. So how come the adequate representation of the OBC will come to know? So we can get and every time Supreme Court has asked where is their census? So OBC census has to happen, because only when the adequate representation a thing can be resolved. There is a census for SC/ST. Why should not there be census for the OBC? And for all the time, actually, this Article 16.4 says backward class of citizens and adequate representation. So we will come to know that there is no, as yesterday Dr. Harshdeep Kamble has also said, in the Secretariat, we do not have even a single SC/ST and OBC secretary. So the truth will come out, and I think Milind Avsarmalji really said in the America, in this South North American helped the South American, and it was a white who had taken the cause of the blacks. And I would like to tell you that there 85% are the whites and 15% are the blacks. But and racially they had given the name of the president's house a White House, that only white will come. But we have seen that 85% people's heart have changed, and they made Barack Obama, a black man, the president of India. I hope that we are here, the condition is different. We are like 85% black, SC/ST, OBCs, and 15% are white. But still with 85%, actually, if we deceive clutches of these people, actually, we will make a miracle. And Babasaheb has given us a document called Indian Constitution. He has said and it is against the Manusmriti, actually, because Manusmriti has disfavored us. The Constitution favors us. But even though Constitution favors, we people are, I think we, as a OBC community representative, I say that more awakening is required in the OBCs. Thank you very much. Thank you. So question session can start now.
Should I consider that this question by Ravindra Sadhive has been addressed to me, which is flashing on the screen?
Yeah, it is Pune pack. You can.
Yeah. The Pune pack must be cancelled and separate electorate should be implemented. This was the line Babasaheb took all his life after Pune pack, and after the 37 elections, he wrote a whole book what Congress and Gandhi have done to untouchables. It was his position till